Teachers at Reddit, how obvious is it when one student has a crush on a classmate? I once intercepted a note from a boy to a girl that, roughly translated from French, said, "I get hard for you. Do I make you moist? I've done it before. One would do it. Semicolon. This was 8th grade English. Our Casanova wasn't the brightest bulb in the packet, but he had advanced visceral competencies. In middle school they just start trying to get on each other's nerves more and are usually overly smiley. The main problem comes when only one of them is smiley. It's 100% super obvious all the time. But I teach emotionally damaged teenagers. Aren't all teens emotionally damaged? Everything with students is obvious. I know who you have a crush on. I know when you and your friend got in a fight and aren't the same today. I know when you are having a bad week. I know when you've lost motivation. I know when you're looking for attention, and I know when you want to be left alone. Some teachers use this information to make informed decisions, like sitting you next to your crush, cutting you slack that day, asking if everything is alright, etc. But I've seen some use it to be unfair to students. Edit. Thank you for the silver. I am glad to hear some positive stories of caring teachers from people. I work at an alternative school with kids who have lots of trauma from their past. I think if you cannot be compassionate you shouldn't be in this profession, but I understand many have had negative experiences with teachers who shouldn't have taken the career path. Depends on the age. But the signs are obvious as hell. Lots of staring. And not so obvious but very obvious attempts at being near them. Visible disappointment when they aren't put in the same group for group work. Jealousy in all forms. I've seen a kid hate a classmate for weeks because that classmate sat next to the kid's crush for morning meeting. Super obvious. When a girl says stu-woopa while laughing at a guy who is teasing her. Or a guy goes out of his way to make fun of her, steal something from her so she'll have to pursue him to get it back. It makes me 100% certain. That is a perfect spelling of the way young girls say stop in that situation. Shout out to my high school econ teacher for noticing that me and a girl were into each other. Constantly putting us in the same group. Straight up asking the girl if she had a boyfriend while I was in the room. MRS. There's a boy in my class whose voice hasn't changed yet. But every time he is talking to another girl from a different class, he is noticeably lowering his voice to sound deeper. Obvious signs are obvious. I once had a teacher tell me that my crush and I worked together well, and used him and I as an example for something. We ended up together and she said, "Oh, I so predicted it." Seeing the reaction on her face was priceless and I'll never forget it. So, apparently we were very obvious. They start sitting next to each other. Then why does she keep moving away? Not a teacher. But I had an amazing teacher. She knew I had a crush on this girl. And she might have known she had a crush on me. All high school assigned seating we were put next to each other. All projects we did together. She put us together for everything. I'm marrying that girl in 4-5 weeks. Thanks MRS. Perez. What's even more obvious is when one has a crush and the other isn't interested. I'm speaking strictly from the demographic from my own school I taught at. So I hope it's clear I'm not generalizing all teenagers here. But I've noticed when a girl is crushing and the guy isn't, he is more likely, but not always, to be more forward about telling her so. To the point, in 1 or 2 cases, of sometimes being openly cruel to her. The girls in the reverse situation act annoyed and will sometimes make their disinterest clear. But more often than not they grin and bear it and try to pretend the crush doesn't exist. That's all I've got. I was there 4 months. Former middle school teacher here. I actually told kids one year that if they wanted me to change their seating chart they could email me. This was to avoid potential conflicts or bullying. Instead, a girl asked me to put her next to the boy she liked. I did. I wanted to reward her for asking for what she wanted. I think my exact words were, "Get it, girl. Unfortunately for her, he wasn't interested. They started hanging around each other a lot. Always hugging. Making lots of context for physical contact. Then they started holding hands. Became very close to the point that you'd never see one without the other until they finally started dating. They were two of the most troublesome children. And to this day everyone is afraid of this relationship. Sadly. I tried to ask this question, but instead of classmate, I wrote teacher. I was told the Wi-Fi was spotty in jail, which explains my lack of responses. Used to teach 6th and 8th grade science at an inner city school. I told all of my students their best chance at dating their crush was to be respectful. The 8th graders ignored me and proceeded to make fun of their crushes. The 6th graders though, they bought it. 11-year-olds were holding the door open and pulling chairs out for their crushes. Being supportive and kind to one another. Cutest tea ever. Edit. In the words of my teacher, who I recently saw during break, in college now. When she decided to sit in your lap every day and started playing house with you instead of working, I kind of got the hint. How in God's name did you miss it? Apparently. The fact that this girl was so obvious while I didn't see it triggered her. She even ranted about it for a couple of minutes in one of her other classes before she realized that that was inappropriate. In my defense, the girl was actively trying to send mixed signals. Girl literally confesses undying love. She might be kidding. Better play it safe. Not a teacher, but my Spanish teacher somehow noticed my crush. I didn't have Spanish class with my crush. Also, my history teacher always placed me by my crush, not creepy, and I started to guess that one teacher noticed. They spread it to other teachers. Yes. That's exactly what happened. I'm a teacher. We talk. When they're in kindergarten they go from ignoring the other person to holding hands at recess and getting mad when they don't get out in the same play center together. Up until high school. And even then sometimes. It takes the form of harassing or picking on the person they are attracted to. It's more socially acceptable at that stage to mess with them than just express attraction. It's funny to watch TBH. Well, not now, but when I was in high school a student and a substitute teacher had a relationship. It started off as him giving compliments every day, then after some time later they were kissing and he would grab her ass in front of other students. Don't know how she wasn't fired or how they were never caught. Not a teacher but as a student. I enrolled in a home economics as a senior to get the easy credits. I soon regretted not signing up for graphic design class. Because the class consisted of teen moms and their soon-to-be fathers with only 17yo virgin me in the middle of the class. So yay. That is another clear sign that classmates had a crush on each other at one point. Shoot. I need to know how obvious this is in an office setting with adults. Asking for a friend. As a manager. Very. They tell me in hopes to derail the class. But my love for molecules is greater than my love for teenage gossip. Not a teacher. But I was completely oblivious as a kid. In 7th and 8th grade had a crush on a girl in class. And it wasn't until years later that I figured out she had been flirting with me. Sitting on the desk in front of me. Coming to me after class in the hallway to tell me she thought I was the smartest kid in class. I wasn't. And that was my response. Followed by walking faster to get away from her. I remember there being other clear signs. But I have tried to put it behind me. We have mutual Facebook friends. So she popped up in my suggested friends at some point. She's still really ridiculously good looking. Clearly every teacher is going to say that it's obvious. Because if someone hides their crush well, then they'll never know about it. How can you be sure that the non-obvious ones just don't go unnoted? That's the rub, isn't it? It's like the question women. Do you notice when men look at your boobs? Maybe they notice 100% of the time. Or maybe they notice 10% of the time and think it's 100%. We can never be sure. When your high school chemistry class has n desks and n+1 students. So someone at random has to sit on a lab bench for the lecture. But somehow you end up with n1 desks filled with students. One empty desk. And 2 students sitting together on a single lab bench. Not a teacher but working in a care home. One of our girls has a crush on one of the boys and it's so obvious. She's started taking more care of her appearance. She laughs too loudly and obviously at stuff he says, some of it not even remotely funny. Wherever he is she's not far, etc. The obvious ones would be obvious. But many more silent crushes will go completely unnoticed. So the tempting answer would be it's obvious. But the truth is that it's less obvious than it seems. I'll tell you right now that when I had crushes in school, it was top priority that no one ever find out, especially the object of the crush. I'd say pretty obvious. I remember one day my college professor was talking to me after class and asked me what was going on. He then asked if I was in love with anyone. And even my friend said everyone within 4 knows you like her, which was probably true since most people thought I was dating her. I'm not a subtle person and I know I'm obvious. My math teacher once told my sister that I was in love with the boy who sat next to me. I mean, it was true, but why'd she have to share? If the 2 kids are in your class in the same hour class period, it does become pretty obvious. They get all nervous around each other. But if I'm being honest, teachers aren't really interested or concerned about that. They've got a job to do. When I taught HS I never knew or cared about the gossip. Unless it turned into a physical fight right outside my classroom. Which was the farthest away from the security desk in the school, so it was a popular site for fights. My English teacher thought me and my best friend were in a relationship all through senior year, which we thought was funny when she told us, but then he ended up kissing me after graduation and we dated for a little after that. I guess she knew better than we did at the time. I'm convinced one of my old professors could tell I was into another classmate just by the professor's reaction as I was saying I'd see my interest the next semester. I work with special needs in a high school. It's extra obvious for us because a lot of them are experiencing these emotions for the first time. And don't really have the social filter to feel awkward about showing it. On one hand, it's like sweet and cute. On the other hand, they can be a bit explicit. And we have to step in frequently to tell them to rein it back. In elementary it's very obvious. And in the lower grades they can be very sweet about it, giving little gifts, drawings, act. In the upper grades it's basically insults and cuties. When they start F-king on your desk while you're trying to teach about Charlemagne. Not a teacher. But my Spanish teacher in high school said she could match people pretty easily. We sat in pairs. And, at the time I had her 5 years ago, she had managed to pair 3 or 4 couples that actually got married down the road. You know, it's pretty sad when I read these and literally none of these have ever happened to me. Not a teacher. But in 10th grade science class I was ostracized by my classmates, so I moved seats and began sitting behind my crush. It led to an invite, original name on invite crossed off, to her birthday party. That makes me not sure whether to laugh or cry. This is the wholesome thread I needed today. Not a teacher. But in 10th grade I was after school working on a chemistry project when my teacher told me she was moving my seat next to Josh. I asked why and she said I was the only girl in the class he ever talked to and I always smiled big when he did. So, apparently it was obvious. Very. I'm a university professor and it's usually quite obvious. On more than one occasion I have entered a classroom and there are foot and back massages going on between students when I come into a class early during a break. Not during a class. I agree with Judo 16, it depends on the age. The average age of my students is 18-25. On several occasions, I would be talking with a female student about her progress in my class and the male who liked her would be on guard and ready to speak up for her. At least once per semester. I have to give the famous. The dumbest thing a man can do is speak for a woman who can clearly speak for herself speech. I'm your teacher. Not MR. Steal yo girl. So sit your ass down before I give her the confidence boost she needs to leave you. When I went to a summer camp in 6th grade, I made a mud ball and hit my crush in the face near the river we were exploring. It hit her so hard she fell into the water. Semicolon. We never became anything if you're wondering. Can't imagine why. Freshman year of HS I had a crush so obvious that my teacher moved seats so that we were sat next to each other. And then he dramatically increased the number of work with the person next to you activities. We just thought we got lucky at first, but he kinda confirmed it was on purpose later. Lol. It worked. We dated for nearly 5 years. Only breaking up because we left for far apart colleges. 9th graders are obvious as hell. Boys just make asses of themselves and then look at their crush hoping they're laughing. Usually they're not, because 9th grade girls are about 10x as mature as most 9th grade boys. Girls will laugh at all the jokes of the boy if they're interested, and sometimes do that thing where they pretend to hate the boy and think he is so annoying while giggling. In high school, one of my history teachers must have noticed that this guy and I had feelings for each other. We had assigned seating in that class, but we would change seating charts a few times throughout the semester, and I felt like she intentionally put us together. The desks were these long desks that fit 2 people per desk. We were always laughing and smiley and doing shti like holding hands under the desk. I caught her glimpsing at us once and she visibly looked happy, proud of herself, lol. I always thought that was really cute of her to do. I am in freaking university and I bet everyone around me knows who I am into. Just because my f-king head can't stop turning. This year for my freshman class I did the icebreaker survey. One of the questions was, what person from history would you want as an imaginary friend? This boy wrote this girl's name. When I asked him why, he said because she seemed like a real cool person. So I said that they had just met, so why would he want that, to which he replied something very similar to the first answer. At this point I'm confused, so I asked him again why out of all the people that have ever existed he is choosing someone he just met. It's at this point he realizes what has just happened and turned super red and asks to go to the bathroom. I teach 3rd grade and even at that age it is obvious. Whenever it is that obvious we tend to do a lot of group work and they tend to always end up in the same group. It is such a coincidence. Once in high school I was rubbing the crotch of the girl sat next to me. It started with just touching fingers, then holding hands. Then I touched her leg and just went for it. She was loving it. This was in science class and all the wooden desks were facing the teacher plus board. The teacher, an attractive middle-aged woman, semi-caught us and said, "And will you stop whatever it is you're doing under that desk?" 3/4 of the way through her sentence you could see it click in her head what was going on. That coupled with our bright red faces. What are the chances this is true? So very obvious. So are adults. Not so much an observation of a crush. But when 2 students who have been crushing on each other, and then they suddenly completely ignore each other one day, it always means they have become boyfriend and girlfriend. My teacher set me up with my boyfriend when we were still in high school. I don't know if it was intentional though. My, now, boyfriend, whom I'd barely ever spoken to at the time, helped me with a technical issue for a huge presentation I was going to have. After thanking him profusely, our teacher told him he could probably score a coffee out of that, which he subsequently did. When I asked him out, almost 4 years later and we're still together, I still wonder if our teacher saw something we hadn't yet, or if it was just an offhand comment that spiraled into something else. If you can read road signs you can see students in relationships. One time when I was little, I had a huge crush on a boy. At a parent-teacher conference, my teacher told my parents I had a crush on him and it embarrassed me a lot. I didn't even tell anybody, but it was pretty obvious. Sweats and hormonal teenager. When have SI time in hallway? I have a crush on my classmate and I know that it is super obvious and my crush knows about it. I often look over to her and I am really caring for her. I think that the teachers don't know about it since I am a trans guy and haven't transitioned yet, so it looks like we are clueless friends. So obvious. I'm an ESL teacher in Latin America. And when I suspect there's some crushing going on, I purposefully put those students in pairs to see how they interact. There's a lot of unnecessary touching, like, oh, let me point at this thing in the book, but I need to go around you and hang off you to do it. Then I put them in different pairs. The girl with another potentially eligible guy and vice versa to see how they react. And it's usually with daggers. They're so distracted. They don't really work on whatever they're supposed to be doing because they're too busy trying to see what's happening with their crush. It's really quite entertaining.